And we are live. Hey everyone, this is Once Bitten here, and I am being joined by Mr. Owl from the Ninth Age. How are you, Stephen?
I'm doing fine. How about you?
Good. So our previous attempt it was 49 seconds long, and the viewers could hear both of us. By the way, we couldn't hear each other, but the viewers could hear us. So
Well, we'll
40,
try again.
49 people watched. I'm sorry, there were 49 views, so 49 people watched that. Anyway, so the we Mr. Owl and I wanted to just have a chat about things that we find ourselves talking a little bit about back and forth on the forums, and we thought it might be fun just to sit down and talk in more depth about them. But um, there have been a lot of changes to the Ninth Age recently. We had version 1.1, and then 1.2 came out, and there's some rather dramatic changes. So we want to touch very, very briefly on why those changes were made, and and then spend the bulk of our time talking about what we're calling the design space that opens up. So, Steve, do you want to give us just a brief overview of the changes that led to 1.2?
Yeah, sure. I mean, looking at where we were, I mean, everybody knows what 1.1 was. Uh, I think a lot of people were pretty happy with the game at that point. It seemed like it was in a good space design wise, but we had to change. We had to change for legal reasons, and I posted stuff on the Ninth Age trying to explain that as best I could. So so we made those changes, and there was a lot. The core rule changes with the the composition, army compositions. There was a lot of the spells changed, especially the army specific ones. Um, and there was a lot of things that were taken out. But as you mentioned, it opened up a lot of design space. So when we moved to 1.2, I hear constantly a lot of people saying, "Yeah, but it wasn't as good as 1.1." And of course, it's not at this point because it's a work in progress. So we stripped down a lot of things, but now we have space to work with to try to put in new rules, to try to put in fluff, if you will, immersion type rules to work with. So I mean, 1.3 was kind of a little feel good, version. It relaxed some of the restrictions in the army composition. It gave a few little things, but what we're looking for now actively is the army book redesigns. And
Yeah,
as you know, Warriors of the Dark Gods is ongoing right now.
yeah, yeah. I guess so that we don't have any elephants lurking in corners. What are some of the biggest complaints? Well, I'll start. I mean, some of the biggest complaints I heard about 1.2. One, the loss of racial specific magic paths. People were used to that. Um, and I mean, I don't know. I mean, you can make first of all, we could do almost anything with the game, and we could have kept those same racial specific paths and just changed the spells, and we probably would have been fine, I would imagine. Um, but I think my impression is that getting rid of all of those um, was trying to was an effort to start fresh with what we're trying to do with the Ninth Age. Personally, I was super excited, and I'm still super excited about the approach to magic, where we have these certain paths, and different armies have access to different ones. And to me, like, it makes sense. Like, if you're not really magically strong, you have access to three. If you are, you might have access to five.
Mhm.
I actually really like it. But then again, I didn't play armies with their own paths that I cared that much about.
Right. And I think that was one of the comments that that was taken by the rules guys, is that there were a lot of paths out there that just weren't really used. There was a lot of duplication of stuff. Um, so now, then you have on the other hand, you have the argument of, I'll say, more of the fluff guys that just said, yeah, but we liked those paths because every once in a while I did want to play one of those racially specific paths, and there was a lot of kind of cool stuff in there, even if it wasn't up to power as some of the other ones. So, but the point is that there was a lot of design space open, so we have room now. We have room to do stuff, and I'm hoping that the rules guys are going to be able to fill up some of that design space with new stuff. You know.
Yeah. Of course, my prediction would be that some of this design space isn't going to be filled by new racially specific
Mhm.
paths. I think that's just a path. I mean, we could do anything, right? But I don't necessarily see that. I think, and neither you nor I can say for sure what's going to happen. So anybody watching this, we're not predicting this. We're saying there are a lot of things they could do. Um, we could come up with racially specific, spells that isn't a full path, but it could be added. I mean, things like that can happen.
Well, they've already done that, right? You already have that with VC.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah. So, so they've already started that to some extent. So it's I don't know how much that's going to extend, or if that's going to extend to each army, or if they're going to have more than one, or not. I mean, as the books get rewritten, I think that they're going to just take that book and they're going to treat it how they want. But I don't think there's any set design guideline that says you have to have X number of racial spells, or none, or two, or I don't think
yeah,
there's any
yeah.
design
It's just not in
guideline.
the guidelines at all. Yeah. So here's my take on why I think some people it's not because it's not just about the racially specific paths. So tell me what you think about this theory. Here's my theory. So before we had core units that were usually not as good as other units in the book. I mean, we called it a core tax, right? Like they weren't quite as good. They were a little bit more expensive for what you got. You didn't want to take them, but you have to take so many of them. And the opposite extreme of that, you had rare items that were too good
Yep.
even for their price, right? But hey, you can only take two of them, and you can only have this percentage in your army and stuff like that. So it seems to me that what some people are calling a lack of flavor in 1.2, and this isn't, I mean, it's not everybody, of course. We're speaking about some of the vocal ones. What I see that as is they really miss those rare units that were a little bit overpowered, but they were so much fun to play because they were so good, when they worked. And so now it's kind of like, yeah, they're not as good as they were. You can actually usually have more of them. It's just, they're kind of more balanced with everything else in the book.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the ideas is that you don't want to have these are a must take. That you have to take these units, or this particular monster, or whatnot. They want to try to create more balance as much as possible. So you have real hard choices. At this point. Now, I mean, there are special rules, and there are options, and things that used to be there that aren't there now. But again, they've opened up a lot of design space to allow not just. See, I think one of the ideas behind all this was, at least some of the direction that I was giving. I don't write the rules, but I can provide I get direction, if you will. I just said, be original. Let's come up with something new. Let's come up with even if we can come up with new play styles, that's great. But this is our game, and we have a chance now to actually do something completely different and make it ours. Now, it doesn't mean that we want to just flush the feel of the army that particularly like maybe it's Sylvan Elves, right? Maybe it's Empire of Stones. You have a feel for that army, but we have space now where we can just design what we want. So
Yeah.
we don't have to be tied to another game and say we have to use those old rules, or we have to recycle them somehow. We can come up with entirely new rules.
Right. Yeah. It's funny. Speaking of play styles, um, I've got a prediction to make. Here's what I think is going to. I think this is what we're going to see evolve among the community. In the past, when you talk about play styles, you think there's a Death Star, there's an avoidance shooty list, things like that. And one thing the rules team has been about is to try to take lists that are really skewed in any of those areas. If they're skewed so much that some people it's not really fun to play against, they made them where you can't really do it as well as you used to be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what we're going to see happening now is we're going to see less mono play styles, and we're going to see army lists that are kind of hybrids of other things. Kind of like you can't do, I don't believe, a real true gun line anymore, but you can do a really strong shooting phase. So it's not is it a gun line per se? It's a I don't know. It's a really strong shooting phase hybrid with an actually pretty mobile dwarf force or something like that.
Yep.
I predict that we're gonna see the creation of new names, new play styles, and a lot of them are going to be hybrid from the old ones.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't play dwarves, but I know from reading on the forum, that's one of the things that I seems like there's some complaints on now is that dwarves seem to be forced into more of a shooty play style rather than a mobile play style. But one of the things I wanted to talk about, let people know is 1.3 is not the end. That's not that's not where we're. That's not the final product. I mean, the Dwarven Holds Army book hasn't been done yet, hasn't been rewritten. So, I mean, we are at a point where the game is fairly balanced. If you look at power level is pretty good when you go from from across external power levels. Pretty decent. However, some of the armies are hard to get right. Especially the ones that when these really skewed play styles. Sylvan Elves Avoidance. That's just it's really hard to get right. Or Kingdom of Aquitaine having an all cav list. That's some of those are going to take some real time and attention. But I know that there are those on the rule team that are looking at that and they're saying they want to make sure that they're done right, because nobody on there wants to have the community just upset and saying, oh, this is not my army anymore. I hate what's done with this. And sure, they want to give you what you want as far as the feel. But I think you're right. I think they're trying to avoid those extremely skewed lists.
Yeah. It's funny here. A lot of this is on my mind because I just had a long conversation with a buddy the other day about this. But are you familiar with the new YouTube channel called Wargaming from the Balcony?
Yeah, I love those guys.
Yeah, fantastic. One of the two guys on there, I forget if it's Waldorf or Statler, but one of them, he's one of these guys that wins best sportsman at almost every tournament. It's just a great guy. So he came down to our tournament just a few weeks ago, and he shows up with an Orc and Goblin list that has 4 units of Boar Riders.
Okay.
Which is funny because if you look on the forums in the Orc and Goblin section, you'll see a lot of people saying, they're not worth taking. They're just really bad. What can you do with the 3 up? Blah blah blah. And he took 4th. I think I took 3rd, and he took 4th in the tournament with it. And I'm like, you gotta. I think at some point people need to change how they think about. It's not about going to the book and say, these things are the best for their points, therefore this is my list. I think the better thing to do is to go in and say, what kind of list am I trying to build? What kind of play style am I trying to achieve? And pull from the book elements to accomplish that. And I would even say, when you start off with it, don't worry about the points. Just do it and see if it works. And you'll go a lot farther than just trying to find that little gem that's just underpriced by 3 points per model or something like that.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I think that that's right. I think that there's play styles and things that are being opened up with the new direction that the game's taken. That it's going to take time. People are going to have to experiment with it. They're going to have to try to figure out. Excuse me. They're going to figure out what works for them. And I think that that's right. Stopping and taking a look at what you're trying to do, and then building your army to try to achieve that. I like the new army composition, the way they've broken it out. I think that it gives them a lot more versatility in building. Now, there are people that are complaining that the restrictions, some of the areas, some of the sections are too strict. But okay, well, I mean, what we're talking about is doing some fine tuning, on that. But I think that I'm excited with the direction that the game's going.
Yeah. So I've been involved in creating the Warrior of the Dark Gods book. I'm on the team, but I feel like I'm almost peripheral. Like I told him, I'm like, I'll help as needed, but I don't have time for this too much. But I noticed that you're on there quite a bit, just kind of chipping in your 2 cents.
Yep.
Not designing per se, but saying, broadly speaking, guys, this is what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I'm the guy that's always sitting there saying we need to make sure that the rules are immersive. We want to make sure that the rules are fluffy. We want to make sure it's fun. That the Warriors of the Dark God community. I mean, it's one of the bigger ones. It's been one of the more popular armies. So, um, we want to make sure that this is the first book that we're doing, that we get it right. Uh, but on top of that too, just when you look at the Warriors of the Dark Gods and you look at the Demon Legions book, those those are two of the most difficult books that we're going to have to deal with from a legal standpoint because, well, I mean they're pretty unique, So there's been a lot of time that's been put in on the background for this, and there's a lot of time that's going into the design on this. So what I've been trying to tell the guys is, look, I mean, yeah, we want to get things done in a timely fashion, but it's better to get things done right and take a little bit of extra time if you need to do it. We're all volunteers doing this on our, in our spare time. Everybody's got full-time jobs, so we may need a little bit extra time to get that one done. But I'm pretty happy with what's happening with that book right now.
Yeah, well, I mentioned this to you earlier. I mean, it's funny. Ever since I've played this game, I've always have armies in mind that I thought that I would like to play. But so back when it was Warhammer Fantasy in that game system, I want to say it was 8 of the armies. Like there's 8 that I want. And there's the other ones I don't have any desire to play in the future. And the old Chaos Warriors is one I just really never had a desire to play.
Yep.
And I have now started buying models for my Warriors of the Dark Gods army that I'm going to have to start because just immersed in creating the book and seeing what could be out there, that I'm like, I've got to try this. I mean, this looks like a lot of fun to me.
Yeah. Well, I think I know why too.
Yeah. So we can't say that's the problem, and I'm not trying to be coy about it. We just to the viewers, we can't say. So I'm going to give one teaser via a story. So literally a couple weeks ago, here at my new little gaming area, I was going through this bin of crap, and I found all these old templates, the 3 and 5 inch templates. I think I had like 3 3-inch and 1 5-inch template, and I was like, dang, I don't think I need these anymore, right? Because the shooting changed, and so I just literally threw them in the trash. I kept there's a really nice one, a set that a guy at the channel made for me, which I kept, but the other ones I just kind of threw away, and then. We turned a corner with one of the units in the Warriors of the Dark Gods things, and I'm like, I had to go back to the trash and dig them back out. Like, okay, so keep your templates. There's some pretty cool uses for them coming up in the near future, and I think that's fair enough to say without breaking our non-disclosure agreements.
Yeah, well, you're right. We can't really disclose everything that's going on in there yet, but. One of the things that has happened though is that the design space has been opened so that not just some new rules can go in there, but the concepts of new different play styles can go in. And I think that is, looking at what's going on in there right now, that is one of the most exciting things about this project, is to see where we can take this game. And I can't wait to see that book done and out and people playing that, and especially, playing these different play styles. That's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah. Do you know when the new marks will be? Will those come out with the Warriors of the Dark God books, or will those be released prior?
I don't know. There was some discussion about that. I'm going to leave that to Blonde Beer on the Ninth Age website. He's in charge of our PR, so I'm not sure when. There was some discussion about having some pre-release information, but I'm going to leave that to him as to exactly what it is that he wants to disclose and how it's going to be done. He does a really good job, with describing all that stuff, especially with the scrolls.
Yeah,
and obviously Orange Road, right? So.
Yeah, the dude deserves a medal or something. The amount of work he puts in on this project is insane.
Yeah, Jan is he is a very good guy. That, and the amount of time he puts in and the amount of work that he gets done, you just got to tip your hat to him and say, dude, you got to make sure you get some sleep too.
Yeah,
he works extremely hard. Love him.
Yeah. So it's been interesting working on the Warriors of the Dark Gods book, because one of the challenges that is going to affect that book, I think it's going to affect Orcs and Goblins. That's going to be a difficult one too, in that we're trying to get all the army books to have roughly the same number of entries. And so for the books that already have a ridiculous number of entries, that means you need to have fewer,
Yep.
which is tough because another mandate is if people have models that they've have been playing, they have to still be able to use that model with that army.
Yep.
So you can't just take out, you can't make models irrelevant. So that means that really a lot of times you have to merge units. You have to say, well, if you look at this series of models and this other series of models, can we create a unit where both of those could be used and it makes sense?
Yeah.
And that's been kind of a fun little challenge.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at some of, like, I play Orcs and Goblins, so I love those. I love that army. If you look at the amount of entries in Orcs and Goblins and say Warriors of the Dark Gods compared to, say, Sylvan Elves or to Kingdom of Aquitaine, right? I mean, it's one of the books. The other books, they're twice the amount of entries. It seems like, So there is a huge disparity there. So I would imagine that some may get a bit of a haircut, and others you've got design space to use.
Yeah, yeah. And like you said before, a lot of this, we're trying to get the core rules stabilized. The army books are just going to keep coming out,
Yep.
as fast as we can. I mean, it's going to take a while to get through them all. But really, we want the core rules, for the most part, stable for a long time.
Yep. So on the core rules, I mean, there was a big change, going to 1.2. I always like to say it's kind of like, if the army books are houses, the core rules are the foundation of everything. So when the core rules changed, I mean, it's really hard to think or to know how that's going to change everything else, because small changes in the core rules can have really big consequences, in the game. So, so it was a big change to 1.2, and that's why I think the rules guys were a bit conservative in their approach with taking things out and trying to keep things tight so that they didn't completely skew the balance. 1.3 saw a little bit of a relaxation, of some of those restrictions, just to give people something, a little bit more ability to create lists, a little bit more room to be able to do what they wanted to do, because they were able to see that things weren't too skewed. But the core rules are not finished. There's going to be more changes to those, leading up to 2.0, and I think 2.0 is supposed to be sometime toward the end of the summer, but I don't see that there's going to be drastic changes to the core rules going forward. There's going to be a few things. In particular, if you look, from the legal side of things, it's looking at the way the stats are presented, and looking at the way that the tables are done. We're going to have to do. So it's going to be a lot of cosmetic things, I think, that are going to happen. But as far as I guess the way that the mechanics of the rules themselves, I don't think that there's going to be drastic changes, to those core rules. I think there'll be some, but I don't think it's going to be too drastic. When 2.0 finally comes down and hits, we're going to be at that point at a very stable spot, and I don't see those core rules changing for 3 years, maybe more. I don't know.
Yeah.
2, 3, 4 years. Anyway, but that's one of the things that I keep hearing is, please, stability, please, please. So that's what they're actively working towards, getting a stable rule set, and then, let people print those books out if they want, and actually make some really nice bound books and hold on to them for a number of years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what Games Workshop used to do, right? I mean, about 7 years between editions, maybe 6, 5, whatever it was, but a certain, years between editions. Yeah. And I'm kind of in that camp too. I'm like, there's no such thing as a perfect game. It doesn't exist. So I like the game well enough. The rules could change, and I would like that well enough. I've never been hugely picky about certain things in the mechanics. Like, as long as it gives me the feel of the game I want, it's all good. So at some point it's like, let's just commit to, the 2.0, let's commit to it and just roll with it. And then, 2, 3, 5 years down the road, we can change some things if people want the game to take a turn, and if not, then we don't. I mean, whatever.
Yep. So yeah, so I would expect that once we get toward the end of the summer, 2.0 hits, we're going to have stability on that front for some time, and a lot of people are just begging for that. So I'm fully supportive of that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, cool. Any other thoughts on design space and things that we haven't talked about?
Well, some of the stuff that I mean, again, I don't write the rules. I just basically look at things and say, we're going to need to make an adjustment from a legal perspective because, X, Y, and Z, we need to make a change. I don't make the decision as to what those changes are going to be, but I do like fluffy, immersive stuff, and from a design standpoint, I would say that pretty much everything is on the table. So maybe we will see some racial specific paths or spells. Maybe not. Maybe some of the more magic. Shall we say like say the high elves. They're more into magic. Maybe they'll get something there. Maybe the other armies will get something else. Maybe special rules. I hope that they all see some very interesting new special units like what we're seeing with the Warriors of the Dark Gods. But we have a lot of space, and we have a lot of really smart guys that are working on the design team. So, I'm just excited to see what's going to come out.
Yeah. I can tell you one thing I've been doing lately is I've been trying to put my money where my mouth is and build lists using things that people are saying are subpar.
Oh, are you okay?
Yeah, so I don't think it's possible to get perfect internal balance here, right? But and so things will always be a little bit subpar. But I don't think that things are that far off in the books,
No,
right?
no, I don't think so either. I mean, if you looked at 1.1, the balance that was there was obviously a whole lot better than the balance that was in 1.0. If you look in 1.2, the balance has gotten even better. And I think that 1.3, the balance is pretty much the same as what we saw in 1.2. So I think that at this point, they feel that the balance is pretty good. Now, there's this concept of adding immersion and adding, special rules and adding new types of units and whatnot. So, I mean, I think that it's true. You're never going to achieve, perfect balance, because if you do, at some point you just lose the difference between the armies, right? So you can never achieve that perfect balance, but we're pretty good right now, as far as balance goes. Now there's a lot of the efforts that I see going on in the design teams is that they're trying to come up with new, unique, different types of units. They're trying to think about how these synergize with each other to create play styles that the communities have said that that's what they want. They want this type of play style or that type of play style. Maybe they've list 3. So how do the units that they're coming up with synergize to be able to enable those play styles? And sometimes they're coming up with with it. They're taking an old unit and they're coming up with completely different rules for that. And that's one of the ways also that they're trying to comply with if you have an old unit, you need to be able to use it. Well, just because you have an old unit doesn't mean it's going to play the same way as it used to. It could have a very different play style than before.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
One thing I don't know if people know this or not, but one thing that's really cool is, when we have in the design process for the book, we've got a team of, I think it's 5 of us technically that are on the book, but then we have people from I forget what all the acronyms stand for, but basically you have the background people that are heavily involved, and their job is specifically not to tell us how to design units or anything like that. Their job is to tell us for this unit that they're saying these kind of units should be there, and we say, well, here's a unit we're talking about, and they tell us the background of it, and we're like, okay.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so if you look at the design process, that was specifically how we wanted to set it up. Is the background guys, have been working, very hard to put together an entirely new background. So couple that with the design guys. We have a group. It's CDS. So these. Oh man, I can't remember what all the acronyms stand for either.
I
Uh,
know.
yeah, but these guys are like the creative, the creative input, and they're talking with the guys in the background, and they're reading all the stories and whatnot, and they're coming up with these innovative, fluffy ideas and whatnot. And they're feeding that into the design teams. We have rule team members that are that are on the design team that are integrally part of the process. So that's great. Um, and then we have the background guys feeding all this new information into the design team, and then from that they're coming up with these new designs that are true to the background, and that's really one of the ways that we're saying this is how we're going to be different. We've come up with a new background, and these units that we're designing are true to our background. They're not true to anybody else's intellectual property.
Yeah, and I can tell you, they really do take that seriously. I know that, like, if we're talking about a particular unit, and one way we start off with is we all just start brainstorming ideas. Like, come up with 2 or 3 designs, anything at all. Just everybody come up with a bunch and let's put it out there. And then we'll start kind of whittling them down and see which ones we like best. And then I think it's CDT. I think it's Creative Design Team.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
could be it.
whatever. But then 1 or 2 of them will step in and they'll say, this doesn't work. This doesn't make sense at all. I mean, or they'll say, this isn't true to their background. Their background is this. So these other designs seem better than that one. And it's really interesting. And to your point about having somebody in the rule team on the book creation team is hugely so much better because the first time around, like when I was doing the Beast Herds book, we would create stuff and then would go to the rules team and they would say, no, you guys went a totally wrong direction with that. And we felt like, wow, we did all this work for nothing. And now they're integrally, enmeshed in the design of it.
Yeah. So I mean, you look at the Warriors of the Dark Gods group, right? You have Eric, who's in there. You have Diego. Both of those guys from the design team that are working actively on it. You have Kent, who's on the rule team, who's working with the CDT. And then the balance team is working with the design team to come up with point costs for these things. And you've got Frederick and I think you've got Wilhelm from the rule team that are working on the balance team. So they're actively involved in this whole process, and then add in all the other design guys that aren't on the rule teams that are working with them. One of the things I'm really happy about is all the design guys get to work integrally with the rule team, so they get to learn from them, and there's all kinds of cross training from this. And for how it is, right? For a volunteer project, we need to train.
Yes.
So, but these guys are really getting good, at what they're doing. So, especially looking at the new designs they're coming up with, I sit back and just go, man. I just I want to get these done and get these out to the community so they can see it. Our biggest challenge that I can see we have right now is our communication, and just not having enough individuals to put information together to get it out there to the community so they can see what's going on. We just, like you're saying, Giannis, he does so much work as it is right now, but he is so overworked. We need to get him some help. But
Yeah.
they're doing a great job.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you talked earlier about my philosophical ramblings, time and attention one. It's like, for most of us, this isn't number one on our priority list. It's hugely important to me, but I've got family obligations. I've got work obligations, and when you see the amount of time that different people put into it, it's crazy.
Yeah. And I look at the guys on the rule team, and these guys are doing hours of stuff every single day. You look at the guys, on the management side, say the executive board, the advisory board, people in the background section doing the writing. I go on, and some of these guys are on all the time, and they're doing 3, 4, 5 hours on this stuff a day, and I don't know how they keep up with that, and still be able to, pay the rent, pay the mortgage, and do what they do. But it's I guess it's a fun project, and it has a tendency to pull you in. And the more you see going on, the more you want to be involved with it. So I can understand how the pull. Um, but yeah, there's only a limited amount of time that we have, and this is why when it comes to deadlines, with regard to the Army books and whatnot, sometimes we just need to let those slide, because at this point, it's not just about trying to get things out, on a particular deadline. At this point, we want to make sure we get things right. So this is going to be our very first Army book that comes out. We want we want a wow factor there. We want people looking at this and saying, wow, these guys did a great job with the design. But not only that, when you look at the art, the art team, these guys are, people, I don't know if people know it, these guys, we have professional artists on there, and they're taking their time, and we have professional writers on there. So, you're going to get a huge amount of background information on who the Warriors of the Dark Gods are, who are the Dark Gods now, what is, what motivates them, and it's kind of tied in with the Demon Legions, obviously. So there's a huge amount of background information that's going to be coming out, and well, Edward, Scottish Knight, he's really heading up that whole effort. But I'll leave it to them, to present that information. But I'm hoping that we're going to get some information to the community on that pretty soon.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm excited to see. I haven't read the the fluff behind the Warriors Dark Gods book. I've talked to the people writing it, but over that, but I haven't read it yet, and I'm actually really excited to read that.
Yeah, there's a ton too. And we're going to be doing a background compendium, right?
No, actually, I don't think I've heard about that.
Okay, so we're having the full Army books that we're putting out, and it's going to have descriptions of unit entries, but we're also going to be doing a background compendium, and we're going to be covering background information for all the different armies. So there's going to be dedicated areas for every single faction, and our idea is that we want to create a very immersive world. You've got the world map that's out there, now, but we want to create stories, for all these different factions, but we don't want to create just stories for absolutely everything. One of the concepts is we want to create frameworks, and then we allow people, because let's face it, this is a community project. We want people to be drafting their own stories. We want them to be drafting their own campaigns, if they will, and putting those up on the website. Because there's a lot of very good writers out there that I see writing that are not staff members, and like, there's a huge amount of potential there for the community to write stuff. And I can honestly see, in the coming years, if somebody's out there and they're doing really good stuff, and their writing is really good, I can even see community drafted stuff even being adopted as official stuff, in time over the years. So I mean, not promising that, but I could certainly see something like that happening.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I never thought about that before. I actually heard about that a few weeks ago. The need to make sure that there's enough gaps in the histories and the lores, and even in the geographies in the cities. Like, we don't want to name every city in a faction, because we want people to be able to come up with their own city and a background for it and stuff like that. And I'd never considered that before, and I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, what we need to do is we need to give them a world, and we need to give them a good story and a good framework, I guess, to work within. And then we say, okay, now write a story, write a campaign, about something that happened from this time frame to that time frame, and post it up there. Let somebody else do that too. The more of this stuff that we get out there, the more the community then is really building the world. And I'm hoping that we're going to have lots of different types of campaigns that are going to go up on the website. You put them up in that homebrew section, and that people can just go up there, they can grab the stuff, and they can play them. We just need to get the framework out, and that was one of the big reasons why we wanted to get the full BRB out there, because it gave you the world map, and it gave you some framework to work within. But that background compendium, when it comes out, that's going to be big. That's going to give a lot of information. There's going to be it's going to be a really nice book.
And do we have a anticipated date for that? Not that we can commit to it.
I don't know at this point. It's just there's so much work that's involved with that, so I don't know when that's going to come out. It might even be a multi-volume thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, that's going to be more up to Edward.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, that was fun. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, no problem. It's just for everybody out there that doesn't know, but Once Bitten is he's part of the senior management at the Ninth Age, and he's working in the design side, but he's also working on the management side. I'm very happy that you're involved with the project, Chad, because you bring a depth of understanding of the U.S. community, but also a very level head, I guess, to a lot of the different types of discussions. And seeing the discussions in the Warriors of the Dark Gods book that you've been involved with is, well, it's exciting. You're one of the reasons why I actually went out and bought a whole Beastard's army. Seeing what you did with them. So it's I don't know if I'm going to do Warrior of the Dark Gods, because I already have like 7 or 8 armies that got going on right now. But
I hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate all that. It's funny. I'm actually really proud of that Beastard's book, and I don't take credit. There was a team of people working on it. Blah blah blah. I'm proud of it. I think it's a fantastic book. I really, it's a lot of fun to play.
Yeah.
And you probably haven't finished painting yours yet, have you?
No, I haven't. So it's just well, my problem is I picked up Vermin Swarm, and you know how many of those are paint. So my problem is I've got too many armies going at once. So. Well,
yeah, I hear you.
So
I hear you. All right. Well, hey, thanks again. And we'll do this again sometime.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. I'll see you.